This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Rob Barrett's my engineer on the other side of the glass. How you doing, Rob? All right. Let's talk about finding something to write about. Check this out. I think it's safe to say most people think, I am the way I am. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, imagine if you could pull yourself out of, say, severe depression without medication. Dr. Chen Wu and his dad, who's a mathematician, have been experimenting for years on ways to help people control their subconscious mind. The methods were developed by the father after he suffered with depression in his 20s, and now the two of them are sharing their findings through their book. It's called Subconscious State Manipulation. All right, Dr. Wu, give us the details.
My dad has been kind of just treating his coworkers, friends, family for years now. And the issues they had were, anxiety, stress, depression, insomnia, sleeping disorders. And he's had amazing results. I mean, the cure rate is pretty much 100%, which is unheard of. So he kind of developed these methods himself a while ago because he suffered from severe depression when he was in his 20s, and he overcame them by these methods that he kind of came up with. So he didn't really understand why they worked so well, but they were super effective. So he's been continuing doing this with his, friends, peers, and all this stuff for years. And then we've been discussing them cases for years also. And then about sometime maybe 2-3 years ago, we had this sudden insight as to why his methods were so effective. It's because of that we came up with this whole new theory on how the subconscious mind works and how to influence it in the direction that you want it to go in. And since then, we've honed the theory, come up with better methods based on our theory, and the results have just skyrocketed. Still pretty much 100% cure rate. However, people are responding to these methods so much faster than my dad's previous methods.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. Let's say depression, right? The cure is really just doing more things that you enjoy doing, reviewing good memories that you have that gives you this fulfillment feeling, gives you this happy feeling, give you this feeling of proudness, accomplishments in the past and stuff like that. That sounds like common sense, right? Just think the happy thoughts and all that stuff.
Right.
However, the reason why so many people can't cure themselves is because of this delayed reaction with the subconscious. They do these happy thoughts, once in a while, not very frequently, and they don't see any results. But that's just because the subconscious doesn't change that quickly. To make it faster, you have to do these exercises very frequently. In our book, we say 3 times a day, 5 minutes each time. And as much as you can, whenever you have these negative thoughts, you trigger the happy thoughts right away to combat it. So the key is the frequency. And the other thing about the subconscious is that it's not that you do this much exercise and that causes the same amount of results. The way it works is that actually no results, you don't notice anything going on, and then all of a sudden, when you actually do the exercise enough times, you get an instant bump up. It's like a stepwise thing. It's all or nothing.
This sounds like something that should be published in a psychological journal.
I mean, I agree with you there, but I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm an MD, so that gives me some credentials. My dad's a mathematician. He's not in the medical field. He has a PhD in math. So we're not in that academic situation where people would actually look at our stuff, I think. But we know the stuff works so well. 100% success rate, unheard of. Psychiatry right now, in modern society, modern medicine, they're not really curing many problems. They're kind of giving medications, which by and large just numb the entire brain. And then, people think they feel better, but they also can't do the same amount of complicated thinking, analysis with their minds because the medication is pushing everything down.
Right. So you're just hoping to get this to the general public. Are there like how-to exercises? Like here's a chapter on depression. Here's what you do. Is that how this book works?
We give the theory in the beginning, and then throughout the book, we have different chapters on different illnesses that we've treated and the prescriptions we used for these, different cases. And so you can pretty much, whatever you're suffering from, go skip to the chapter that you want, and then just follow those prescriptions.
How are you going to get this to the general population who are going to say,
Um,
geez, you're not even a shrink. You're not a shrink. Your dad's not a shrink. What do you know?
sure. We're doing some of our own presentations. My dad is doing book signings at Barnes & Noble already. He's scheduled, I think, in 2 months or something.
Okay.
And then he's already contacted the local schools in Michigan and trying to present kind of a program for counselors and some, problem kids in the schools.
Okay, this will be interesting to watch. I mean, if it works, this could upset the entire psychiatric community, right? Stay tuned, as they say. Trent Pedley is proud to be a Hoosier, and he cares deeply about the environment and the history that surrounds a place you may never have heard of. The name of his book is Toys in the Closet. Trent.
It's a story that's set in the Indiana Dunes, and 100 years ago, there was a movement that was launched to save the Indiana coast as a national lakeshore. And so Toys in the Closet tells about that struggle, and that's the setting. So I call it a poetic sequel to Edwin Ray Teal's Dune Boy, who published a story in 1943 that was set in the same environment 100 years ago. He lived from 1899 and in the area till about 1916. And then by the 20s, he was in New York and then later became a Pulitzer-winning author. Ironically, I finished writing Toys in the Closet in 2002. And in 2004, I moved to the Dunes and moved that I know that the house that my mother found was actually Edwin Ray Teal's house.
Oh, that's not strange.
Isn't that bizarre?
It's like it was meant to be.
Yeah, well, when we came and looked at the house, she was anxious to get me out. My mother's a realtor and owns her own company, and she was anxious to get me out of the city of Chicago after 9/11. And she kept nudging and looking for places, and she found this house. And I said, well, it's not the dump you found a few years ago out here. And I sent pictures to a cousin in Dayton, Ohio, who had been a pen pal for years, and she wrote back that this was her childhood home. And so that kind of gave me goosebumps and that, okay, I need to buy it. And the Edwin Teal connection came a couple months after I was living here. But I had already bought wallpaper for it to go around the fireplace that had dragonflies on it because he was a naturalist. And I was saying to myself, no wonder he became a naturalist. There's bugs all over the place, bugs I've never seen before. Yeah. So ironically, that's the setting of my story also, Toys in the Closet. And part of the impetus to write the story was that my mother's family were the village merchants in this dune village from just before the Civil War period. And they had a dry goods store here, which was also the post office. And the family home that was built during the Civil War is still standing. And it hadn't been usurped by the national park when the park started acquiring property in 1966. So I wanted to give that house more of a reputation. And so it's a chapter in Toys in the Closet.
But it basically deals with this confrontation between environmentalists and industrialists over the coastline.
Yeah, I have a grandmother in the story that's a Save the Dunes advocate who was at the Dune pageant in 1917. And then I have a paternal grandfather on the other side of the family that was an Inland Steel board of director and an industrialist. So you have that dichotomy of saving the dunes and not caring about the dunes in the same family.
Oh, my
and there's
God.
There's lots of dichotomies in the story. It's a Jewish story that takes place on Christmas. So while our hero, Nathan Franklin, is kind of meandering through his trophy house and having all these flashbacks of growing up and Jewish events, the Christmas music is blasting in the background. So I was president of the Indiana Jewish Historical Society for several years, and I used to give talks on how Jews were portrayed in local literature. And for the most part, they were sympathetic portrayals, but they were all outsider perspective. So my ambition was to tell a story from an insider's perspective, and I think I've done that with Toys in the Closet.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a fine jeweler, so I've been selling fine jewelry for 34 years.
So you still do that, and now you have time to write
Yeah.
Great.
In the past, there were quiet periods in the store. Ideas would come to me, and so I could jot those down on pieces of paper and then come home and type them into the computer. But the story took 7 years to write, and then I did lots of research. And the story is also probably the first bibliography of artists that have painted the Indiana Dunes.
Nice.
So the book is already in the library at the Art Institute of Chicago, and it's in the Jewish National Library in Jerusalem. The Indiana Historical Society has it. A number of Indiana rooms, which are repositories of books about Indiana authors, subjects, and about Indiana. In public libraries around the state, they've been collecting it all. So
That's great. You got a really good start on this, Trent. Good luck. Aurelio Rubildo is a jailhouse therapist, so it is a fitting name for his book, considering that's what he does for a living on Rikers Island, right here in New York City. And Aurelio, I bet you have stories that people can't even wrap their heads around.
They never do. When I like sit down with somebody in a party or something and they ask you, like, where do you work? And you tell them, all of a sudden it's like, what are you talking about? What do you do? And they become very intrigued about what I do. But yes, the stories they're very difficult to almost even reminisce about them.
I mean, Rikers Island and Bellevue, is everybody innocent? You know,
you ever see Shawshank Redemption?
Yes.
Everybody says, oh, no, yes, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. The story I always give is like, if I find you with a gun in your hand and it's smoking and a dead body in front of you, I still have to believe that you are innocent because they all say, I'm innocent. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty. So you have to respect that. Rikers Island is what they call a county jail. They've been charged with a crime. They have not been found guilty as of yet or innocent.
And what do you do? Share individual stories?
Right, that I've been involved with. I dealt with people who raped their own grandmother, people who killed their parents, gangbangers, stick-up artists. All these guys I've worked with, all my life. My whole career has been involved with these individuals. It wasn't that difficult to write. It took me 3 months to write it. It wasn't that difficult to write because, the stories, they tell themselves. They explain the whole situation itself.
Were you ever afraid to be around these people?
Well, in the beginning, you do have some concerns. And, my wife also has some concerns. But these individuals are all about respect. You disrespect somebody in there, slash you. That's the way it is. You have gang members that are from the Nietas to the Latin Kings to the Bloods to the Crips, and they all have this disrespect problem. You can't disrespect them because they'll use any means necessary to hurt you. In the beginning, when I first started, my mind was just not able to grasp this whole idea that that they were so adamant about being disrespected. But once you understand that, then everything goes a lot smoother for you. It took me a lot of years before I finally felt comfortable and able to go into what they call a module for 47 men who have literally committed, the most gruesome, atrocious murders in the city and feel comfortable or not feel that I would be violated. Even today, after 40-some odd years of working with this sort of population, I still have to go in there with the concept and the idea that I could be hurt. But there's always somebody who doesn't know you. When you walk in, they may be in a psychotic state, and they'll just assault you for no reason.
Is rehabilitation even possible for some of these people? You're laughing.
I'm laughing because these individuals cannot function without medication. That's the bottom line. If you let them go today and you say, listen, you're free to go, no matter what you did, you're free to go. And if they're not taking the medication when they're out on the street, they're going to repeat what the horrific type of murders and rapes that they've committed. unless you lobotomize them, it's very difficult to change, because this is what they call a genetic disorder. Although, people are not crazy 100% of the time, they do have periods in their lives where they do function and they do make sense. But without that medication, if they're schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenics, they're going to always be that.
All right, Mr. Rubildo, thank you so much for what you do. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, an Irish love story and a book for kids who think they're all grown up, but they're really not. Don't you go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Ever hear about the Merry Matchmaking Festival in Ireland? Well, you will now that Jane Kiley joins us to talk about her book entitled Roisin, an Irish love story.
It's about an American girl that goes to the Merry Matchmaking Festival in Lisdon, Varna, Ireland, and she meets an Irish farmer and falls in love.
Is this true?
Some of it is true, yes. I did actually meet someone there, and I kind of created a story around it. This was 20 years ago, before I was married. So I just kind of wrote a story and went with it.
What is the Merry Matchmaking Festival?
County Clare is a remote area of Ireland on the west coast. And this was started like over 100 years ago, where they would get together and have this festival for every weekend in September to try to get Irish farmers to meet women because they're so busy with farming. And their tradition just, now, you could meet anyone anywhere, but back then it was pretty desolate. So these men were looking for women, were looking for wives. So there actually is a matchmaker there. I didn't meet him, but there is actually a man that carries around this book that's got like all these matches in there from like the last 100 years, and his name is like Willie Daly or something. I was reading about him. And so it's kind of a tradition that they've kept going, but you go there and it's anywhere from 18 years old to 80 years old. It's like a big Irish party. It was so much fun.
Wow.
I mean, it really was a good time. There was a lot of dancing and music, and it was just, the Irish people are very jovial. So it was very fun for us, as young girls, So I decided, I had written like half of it, and I said, you know what, I just need to finish this and see if I could get it published. So now that my kids are in high school, I have more time. I finished it. But I do like to write, and I wrote some children's stories too that I'm working on getting published. And I have an idea for another love story. I kind of like love stories. I read a lot of love stories. So I'm starting to write another book. I'm trying to pursue the children's books now because I had a whole kind of series that I wrote, children's books.
Good for you. Good for you. You found the time now, and now you can do it.
Right.
It had to feel good when you got, what did they send you? Some kind of certificate in the mail that says you're published?
They sent me a press release. The press release went out to like 4,000 different outlets. And I did get an email from Eris congratulating me and telling me how I could kind of self-promote my book. So I'm waiting for these sell sheets so I can go around to local bookstores. And I'm also trying to promote it in Ireland, which is not an easy thing to do because it's mainly done via email, but I'm going back there next year, so I'm gonna try to see if I could promote it at some bookstores over there.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Let me go with you. If If you need help, I'll
Yeah.
go with you.
Such a beautiful country. Oh my gosh. And from New York, there's really low fares. So you should make sure you go. It's such a beautiful country and it rains a lot, but the people are so wonderful there. They don't have like a care in the world, even though they've had so much tragedy in their world, with invasions. They're just so jovial. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, they don't have a care. It seems like they don't have a care in the world.
All right, Jane, I got to go. I got to book that flight. Speaking of children's books, Jane, Betsy Marino has an adorable one. It's called Why Am I So Small? Why Am I So Tall? Hey, Betsy.
Well, I wrote this about 8 years ago, because I'm like the shortest person in my household. I'm like only 5'1". Everyone, like all my nephews are like 6'2". My grandfather was like 6'3". My father was like 6'2". I'm like, what the heck happened to me? Like my twin brother, I was like, what? Did you like beat me up in the womb? Like what happened to me? Like how come like how come I'm like so tiny? Like all through school, it was like I couldn't reach anything. I was like, what the heck, man?
How tall is your twin brother?
He was like 5'11". And like I teach in school and like the fifth graders, they're like, we're taller than you. I'm like, isn't everybody in the entire world right now?
I guess you're the perfect person to write a book called Why Am I So Small? Why Am I So Tall? Yeah.
Exactly. It's like through the years, like all these little children who like go through the school and they're like so tiny and like these little kids in the same like classroom, like just tower over them. And I'm like, I'm just going to write a book about like why people are so different. And every day, like I'm a teacher's aide, every day I see these kids who are so different, yet they're in the same class. And it's like bigger kids, littler kids, like it's just so diverse. And it's like, oh, I'm just going to write a book.
You see really tall girls always hunch over as if they're ashamed that they're so tall. And short people have issues because they're short. And there's something to be celebrated about both. And so that's a really positive thing that you're trying to do, I think.
Yeah. And every day I see like little kids getting picked on, taller kids getting picked on, like heavier kids getting picked on and like skinny kids getting picked on. And it's like, seriously?
Yeah.
It's like, why are you picking on that child? Because they're different. Why are you picking on that kid? Because he's big. Why are you picking on that kid? Because he's small. Why are you picking on that kid? Because he's a little heavier than you? And my sister, she had published a poem because my sister loved writing poems. Unfortunately, she passed away.
Oh.
And she published one, and I was like, oh my gosh, if she could publish a poem, then maybe I could publish a book. And I have like 5 books. They just sat there for like 8 years, but I can't draw to save my life. I was talking to my gym teacher, and he was like, Betsy, I know a publisher. I was like, what? He's like, I could probably get your book published if they like it. I was like, seriously? And they just liked it, and they were like, well, you don't have to draw it. We could illustrate it for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a dream come true. I read it to a couple of my classes, and supposedly my librarian, I gave her a book sometime in April. They're supposed to let me like sit on the stage and read it to the whole school. And, we're supposed to get together and order some books for like the whole school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. That's a good start.
Yeah. So my principal and vice principal know about it, and
Okay.
So, like my librarian secretary put it out to the other 3 schools in the district. Yeah,
So good.
I'm hoping.
How many times have we heard kids say, I'm grown, I know what I'm doing? Well, no one knows better than Chris Thomas what that can mean. The name of his book, Legally Omitted, Chris. What do you mean?
This book is about a person who basically, I'm the single black male that didn't have the father figure. So, like, for the people that went to college, you already had it made, and you was like, you couldn't wait to get out of the house. Well, I had to get out of the house. And once I got out of the house, instead of just taking care of business and going to school and following the path, you get distracted through friends and parties, and next thing you know, 5 years have gone by. This is all the trials and tribulations of having unnecessary company. And the further you try to get to your goal, the more people try to bring you back to that. Hey, let's go have some fun. We can do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And years just keep going by.
How many years went by before you wrote this book?
Whoa, a good 13. As in, the more you try to do, the less happens.
So did you do nothing for 13 years except have a good time?
Pretty much. Decided to wake up and move. I just kept shrinking down the apartment where there was less room for company.
What finally made you go, I got to stop?
Oh, after about, 30 jobs?
30 jobs?
Never had a vacation. Yeah, never had a vacation. In other words, every time the vacation rolled around, either the check was wrong or now you got to do another year and wait. And I was gone to the next job.
So you would get a job.
Yeah, you get a job, and right around vacation time for you, you're like, oh, okay, I've worked, I've been on time and everything. I'm looking for this money because I need this money to go do what I got to do. Everything would go wrong.
Why?
Well, let's see, the bookkeepers will usually screw it up, or they figure, oh, it's your vacation time? And you're like, yeah, I've taken off and made plans. And, oh, well, now you have to wait another month or, I'd just move on.
That happened 30 times?
Oh, maybe more than that. You name it, from dishwasher to a salesman, to you name it.
Okay, so what are you doing now?
I'm in security where I've been for the last 20-something years, and I'm still in the same situation. If it doesn't pay, you're wasting your time. I've been up the scale of security to the top, all the way to the federal, and the movies and the celebrities, and back down to that condominium stuff. And people are going, when did you write this book? That's the way they hit me now. Like, when did you write this book?
Yeah, when did you write
so
this
book?
book?
That it's like that 2 hours of time that I had. I kick you out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the next crew coming by to see what you're doing at 7 a.m. Well, that's when I was right.
You mean people were just like in your house all the time?
24 hours a day.
That's
Seinfeld had nothing on me. I was the first guy on the block with an apartment, let me put it that way. And everybody's friends had friends, and friends get off work, and friends just never stop coming.
All right, so you were writing this book over the years then?
Yeah.
Oh.
All the adventures, getting into movies, dropping everybody I used to know and hang with just to go do what I had to do.
Did you ever get married? Did you ever settle down?
Nope, never got married. Never settled down.
All right, so you wrote this book so that like kids coming out of high school and going to college.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is what you do not do.
This is what you don't do. So what are you doing? Are you going to college campuses and talking to students and saying, hey, you got to read my book. It's a must read. You should go to high school.
That is my next phase.
Are you going to keep writing?
Oh, yeah. I'm already almost finished with part 2.
Excellent. All right. I can't wait.
I have more peace now.
Okay, good. All right, Chris, thank you so much. Thanks to all of tonight's authors, and thank you for dropping by. Come back next week, why don't you, for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club, or you can download the show anytime you want at 710WOR.iheart.com. Have a great weekend.